Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Saints Insider postgame show. I'm Zach Ewing with Jim Derry here, live from the Caesars Superdome. And if you've been living under a rock, or maybe you were in church all morning or something, you didn't see the score, Saints have defeated the Carolina Panthers 47-10. That's right, 47.
That is not a misprint.
They were up 30-0 in this game. It was 30-3 at halftime. They cruise to a 47-10 victory to open the 2024 season. I suspect most of you here know that already. And you're here to brag or talk about how great things were, or maybe talk about how this is just the high before the fall. I don't know, but we will show your comments live on the air. We'll show your questions live on the air, and we'll talk about the game. We'll have the guys coming out of the Saints locker room. Jeff Duncan, Luke Johnson, Rod Walker, Matthew Paris will all be out here. And in the meantime, Jim and I will kind of recap the game, take your comments and things like that. And Spencer's behind the scenes showing those on the screen. We're brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Our thanks to them. And I guess our thanks to the Saints for giving us some good stuff to talk about.
Well, we said we wanted to have good news. Well, at least we have one thing they can't take away is we have at least 1 week that's going to be fun for us at the bare minimum. There's nothing else that can be said. There's a lot of firsts, a lot of seconds, a lot of long time since such and such happened. We were talking about it upstairs. First time the Saints have scored 40 points in back-to-back games. Remember, they finished the 2023 season by walloping the Falcons. First time they scored 40-plus in back-to-back games since 2018. It's the first time they ever scored more than 47 or more on opening day. So it's the most points they've ever scored on opening day. And it's only the second time in team history they scored 47-plus in September. The last time they did it was the Super Bowl season. So
it's all good vibes, man, when you're bringing up 2009. Look, we talked all preseason. We talked all offseason about what to expect from this team. And, there were the optimistic among us, the pessimistic among us. Nobody, I don't care who you were, thought 47-10 was on the table here.
The most optimistic of optimistic fans could not have predicted that things would go like today would go. Now, granted,
it's 1 week, but
it's 1 week, and things snowballed for Carolina, and Bryce Young looked awful. But that doesn't take anything away from. I will say this, and I know if you look at the stats, the Saints didn't get a whole ton of yards, as many yards as you might think they would get in a game this high scoring. However, there is no question that they are much faster. They get rid of the ball faster. Carr is the designs for Carr are completely different than the stale, stagnant Sean Payton's little clipboard holder has employed with this team since he left this team. And it is going to be a completely different offense. Now, again, that doesn't mean it's going to be some great dynamic offense going forward. But today you could see that it's completely different than it has been.
Yeah, nobody is predicting the Saints will be back here at the Superdome on February the 10th or anything like that. It's just 1 week. But, I mean, you talk about the way this could have started. Carolina won the coin toss. They deferred, so the Saints get the ball first. They went run, picked up a first down, and then went play action deep. Rashid Shaheed, Derek Carr hits him in stride, 59-yard touchdown. Bada bing, bada boom. They get an interception on the next drive. And from Will Harris, who was like supposed to be that safety spot, was like the weak link on the defense.
Right.
Well, the two guys competing for it, Will Harris and Jordan Howden, each had picks today. Yeah. So Will Harris gets a pick. The Saints offense stalls, and then Blake Grupe hits a 57-yard field goal.
Yeah.
And like 5 minutes in, you're going, wow, what a start, 10-0. And it just got better from there.
And you talk about that 59-yard pass. I want to single that one out because all the Derek Carr haters out there, numbers just dropped by half because I just said Derek Carr did something well. I'm going to tell you, that pass, it was 1-2 throw the ball. The pressure was in his face. He saw the pressure coming. He stood in there, and he threw that 59-yard pass on a dime. And I mean, it was right there. Shaheed just basically right on his fingertips made a nice catch to hold on to it. But I tell you, that was impressive. And Derek Carr was impressive today. I don't think there's anyone that can say anything differently because he was getting rid of the ball quickly. He was rolling out. And we were joking like in the game, they're up by 4 touchdowns, and he's like trying to run for 9 yards and lowering his shoulder.
That was like the one thing he did today that I questioned was why wouldn't you just slide instead of risking injury?
Oh, no, I want to show that I got something going. It was fun.
He was 19 of 23 for 200 yards on the dot, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and then there was, I think, 8 rushing yards. Just a really good day for Derek Carr, a really good day for Alvin Kamara, who had 83 yards rushing on 15 carries and a touchdown. We were trying to look this up. His longest run of the entire 2023 season, Jim, was 17 yards. He hit that twice today. He had 2 17-yard runs today. He also had several 9-yard runs. I think he had 5 carries of more than 9 or more yards, which I would have to go back and look through game by game. That might match what he had all of last year.
Look, it's just a different kind of thing. And he looked faster. I got to say, he looked faster. And look, they were so fast. The way they were moving around, I didn't really get a great chance to look and see how the offensive line did. So I will go back and rewatch. If
you don't notice them, that's pretty good, right?
Exactly. You didn't really notice them.
A couple of holding calls.
The thing that I really noticed is they're getting the ball out so quick and they're going around the edges. The problem is, if you continue to do this, the teams you play are going to catch on to it. Well, you'll worry about that when the time comes. I'm not making it as a negative. So, I mean, I didn't get a chance to stare at Trevor Penning because by the time I would look at Trevor Penning, Kamara was like 10 yards up the field. He did a really good job of getting around in the edge. And, again, he looks faster. The whole offense looks faster. And it's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, we'll see, what happens.
Find out next week.
Yeah, that's sort of the caveat, and we don't mean to throw cold water on anything. This is obviously a very positive day. The Carolina Panthers, there's a possibility they're worse than they were last year when they went 2-15. I mean, this team had nothing. They showed nothing. Bryce Young looked awful. The defense looked worse than last year. And so you kind of have to couch this with, okay, the Saints look great, but they were playing possibly the worst team in the NFL again. Now they embark on this stretch of 3 out of the next 4 on the road. Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles back here at home, then back-to-back road trips at Atlanta, at Kansas City. So we're going to find out how real this is, but it's a good start.
Yeah, and they're in a position, we talked about it coming down here, that they really only need to win 1 out of the next 4 to be in the position that we said they kind of have to be in, right? So there's no question that they can win 1 out of the next 4, and I think there's a chance they can win 2 out of the next 4. But going back to your point about Carolina, it just goes to show, you and I spent 2 years together at bet.NOLA.com in the gaming department and trying to rate teams and where they all were, and I think you and I both thought coming into this game that Carolina was a little better. It just goes to show, maybe we don't all, because the sports betting world in general, I think they were higher on Carolina. This number continued to drop throughout the week. The past week and a half, it was at 5.5, quickly went to 5, went to 4, and stayed there for a little while. And then you were saying right before the game went to 3.5. So the people with money were betting on Carolina. They lost a lot of money today. So I don't know whether it's because the Saints are a lot better than we think, or maybe the Panthers just aren't as good as we thought, or a combination of both. It could be that.
We'll continue to send in your comments. We'll show them on the air, and we're going to take a quick break here, but we'll be back. We'll break down some of the scoring and stats. Also waiting on our Times-Picayune columnists and beat writers from the Saints locker room, and we'll get some of the Saints feedback and their feedback as we continue live here on the Saints Insider postgame show. Back right after this.
Your trusted Tulane doctors are now at East Jefferson General Hospital. Within these walls, you'll find our region's leaders in academic medicine, where state-of-the-art facilities house the innovation powered by Tulane Medicine, where collaborative care and compassion meet, and where our commitment to patient outcomes means a healthier future for our community. Tulane doctors at East Jeff. When you see the shield, you'll know the future of medicine is here.
Football fans, with the Caesars Sportsbook app, you can be in the game all the time. Seeking instant action? Quick Picks offers you the most popular games and markets, already built for you and ready to bet. Experience the thrill when you stack your bets to create a super parlay. Build bets for your favorite teams and players across multiple games. This season, don't just watch the game. Download Caesars Sportsbook and experience the game like never before.
We're back.
All right, welcome back to the Superdome Saints Insider postgame show. Apologize for a little technical difficulty on that commercial break, but do want to let you know that the Saints Insider postgame show is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. When it comes to healthcare, choose a partner that sets the standard. Tulane Doctors are bringing the medicine of tomorrow to the Gulf South today. Find your physician at tulanedoctors.com. Jim, want to kind of go through some stats here and things for the Saints. Let me pull this up. Really balanced offensive attack. Now, it helps when you can run the ball the whole second half, but they actually finished 200 yards, 199 yards rushing, 199 yards passing, 180 rushing. So about as balanced as you can get in today's NFL.
Yeah, and I thought they came out with the with the game plan that's what they were going to do. I thought they mixed it up very well. I thought they ran a lot of times when Carolina expected them to pass and vice versa. And so They kept them on their toes. And again, if you're going to have this fast offense that, doesn't necessarily need the best offensive line on the planet to win, you have to be super fast and you have to mix it up. And I thought Clint Kubiak did an outstanding job today.
Yeah, ran for 4.9 yards per carry, and that's actually misleadingly low.
Yeah.
They were at 6.9 yards per carry at halftime, and the 4.9 number comes the fourth quarter was, everybody in the building knew they were going to run it. It was, 2 yards and a cloud of rubber pellets.
Well,
that's going to drag the average down. But the point is, they did what they wanted to do when the game was on the line, and then they held Carolina to 193 yards on the other side. First downs was 22-11 Saints, just total domination. Yards per play was 6.1 to 3.5. When you're outgaining an NFL team by more than 2.5 yards per play, that's domination.
When you're getting 6.1 yards per play, I don't care what the other side's getting. Your offense is doing its job. There's no question about that. And look, it's nice to see Jamal Williams getting the end zone. So
without the controversy,
we don't have to worry about that fiasco this year. He got it done, and it's over with. I'm sure somewhere Mr. Winston is proud. But look, again, they just did their jobs, and they're probably somewhere when the media gets out of that room in a few minutes, they're probably going to sit around and laugh at us, right? Because we've been talking around and talking about and kind of doubting them. I think all of us have somewhat doubted that, especially that offensive line. And again, I don't know what the grades are going to be, and I don't know how great they really did. But when you score 47 points and you pick up 6.1 yards per play, you couldn't have had a bad day. I'll just say that.
And by the way, the Atlanta Falcons lost at home.
That's right. Saints are officially in first place all alone in the NFC South.
They lost 18-10 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Panthers obviously lost. The only other team to play in the division, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, playing the Washington Commanders right now as we speak. So the Saints will be at worst tie in a two-way tie for first place at the end of it's week one. Doesn't matter. But hey, Atlanta's got to face the Philadelphia Eagles next on the road. Then I believe they play the Kansas City Chiefs at home, and then they play the resurgent New Orleans Saints in week 4. Like you can't win a division in the first 4 weeks, but they could certainly kind of put Atlanta behind the 8 ball here in this race.
I think anyone out there who's watched my predictions on the Dettitude podcast this past week will probably point out some of the early season blunders by these Super Bowl contenders. The Bengals and the Packers don't look like Super Bowl contenders. And I said the Falcons would go 12-5 and win the division. Well, they lose to Pittsburgh at home. There's no question the toughest part of their schedule is early on because they go through a stretch later on, Zach, where I think they could easily win 7 or 8 games in a row. So you certainly root against the Falcons as much as you can, and you want to have, if you can go into that Falcons game with a 2-game lead with a chance to go up 3 games, it's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's possible, and then have a 3-game lead because that's kind of what you need with their schedule. Not even in the second half of the season. It starts in like mid to late October, and then it's easy the rest of the way.
Yeah. And look, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I mean, it's week 1.
Oh, it's fun to talk about.
We've been talking all offseason about what to expect from the Saints team, and I think there's you talk about the team laughing at the media predictions and prognosticators. There was a lot of optimism, from the Saints and I think the Saints media before last year and maybe even the year before that. A lot of people saying this team has got it made. The schedule is soft. The division is bad. They should win this division easily. And then the Saints fall flat on their face the last 2 years. I mean, they were 9-8 last year, but let's face it, they did not meet expectations. And so there was quite a bit, I think, in the media, not just locally, but also in the NFL at large, saying, hey, you fooled me twice. You're not fooling me 3 years. You guys are no good. And the Saints, maybe they fed off of that. I mean, maybe they're going to turn the tables on those expectations.
Well, and again, it's just one game, so let's not get – I'm sure the over-under win total is not going to change very much from them winning a game that they were supposed to win.
Mm-hmm.
It'll probably still be 7.5 tomorrow. If you want to jump on it, feel free to do so. But I will say this, going into my predictions, and I predicted them to go 7-10, I said my heart, either my heart or my gut says it's going to be 9 or 10 wins, but I'm not – like exactly what you just said. My head's not going to let me be fooled again, and I'm not picking it. If I'm wrong, I'm pleasantly surprised wrong. So let's not get too pleasantly surprised about one day. We'll find out a lot more about this team next week against Dallas. They're playing a tough one in Cleveland today. There's a chance they could be 0-1.
And 7-3 Dallas right now.
Okay, so if just imagine though, if they lose and they're underdogs in that game, if they were to lose and then they have their home opener next week, they'll be as hungry as they could possibly be next week. So look, And the Saints don't have to win that game now. At least you don't have to. There's no more must-win anymore. But you still need to go and play well. Maybe not this well, but go and show us that this week is for real. That's what I want to see next week against Dallas.
Stefan says the O-line wasn't a problem. Might be because the O-line was better than expected or the play calling was better. I think it's a combination. I mean, there was a couple. If you want to nitpick, like Saints had 95 yards in penalties, and a couple of those were on the offensive line.
Lucas Patrick got hurt, too, in about second or third quarter.
The left guard, who you're not deep there. Both tackles had a holding call. Marshawn Lattimore left with a hamstring injury. Now that's at a position where the Saints are very deep, but you obviously don't want to lose a player of Lattimore's caliber. But this was comprehensive, Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, let's offense, right? We talked about the 59-yard touchdown. Saints come back. Derek Carr threw a touchdown pass to Foster Moreau right here on a play. It was really like a broken play.
Across his body. I didn't really love that pass.
Apparently, it was supposed to be set up for a fat guy touchdown to Landon Young, who was in as an extra tackle on the play. And the Panthers kind of blew it up. So Derek Carr directs traffic, throws back across his body, and hits Foster Moreau for the touchdown.
Between two defenders, by the way.
And Foster Moreau left with an injury, a head injury, later in the game as well. And then Carr's third touchdown pass late first half to make it 30-0 to a wide open Juwan Johnson.
Right.
So he hit his other tight end as well. And then you talk about defense, held Carolina to less than 200 yards, and even half of that was garbage time. They get 3 takeaways and almost had another one on the goal line. Even the drive where Carolina scored, it looked like Jonathan Mingo fumbled on the ball, and Demario Davis recovered it, but he was out of bounds. And then it looked like Bryce Young fumbled on the goal line, and they reviewed it and ruled that he crossed the goal line first. So that's all. And then on special teams, Blake Grupe, 4 of 4 field goals, 2 from 50-plus, including a 57. Rashid Shaheed had a huge punt return.
There's one you're forgetting, Alontae Taylor became the first Saints defensive back ever in the history of this franchise to record 3 sacks in the same game. It's never been done before.
Tied a team record with 3 sacks, and he's the first, tied a team record shared by many players.
51. Yeah.
But none of the others were defensive backs.
Right.
So Alontae Taylor comes free on the corner blitz 3 times and gets home to Bryce Young. To me, by the way, that one's a failure.
By the way, Cam Jordan's name is in there like 12 or 13
That
times.
is a terrible failure on the part of Carolina tonight. Fool me once on the corner blitz, okay. You're letting the slot corner get home 3 times? Come on.
I was worried that the last one they were only going to give a half a sack because I'm not sure who was in there. But somebody got in there with them almost at the same time, but they did give the sack to Taylor. But look, the Saints, I thought the pressure maybe not as much up front from the front line. Chase Young didn't really do a whole lot, which maybe they would. I'll have to, again, I need to go back and look at film because I wasn't staring at him, but he wasn't in a whole ton of plays. So I didn't hear a lot of defensive linemen's names being called, but I thought just overall the defense obviously was outstanding. Again, you're talking about a team that was ranked 32nd in the NFL in offense last year, so let's don't get too fired up just yet.
Stefan says Lattimore not being on the field is more common than not, like Mike Thomas the past few years.
You're right.
It's getting there.
You're absolutely
getting there,
right.
man. And Jim and I were talking about this. I don't, this is a whole nother discussion at some point. But if there is a spot where the Saints can afford that injury, it's defensive back. And by the way, I really think they meant to trade Marshawn Lattimore in the offseason. That's why they drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry, and they probably didn't get what they wanted. And so they just sort of agreed to keep him for another year. I think this is his last year in New Orleans. I think if things go south for the Saints, there's a chance they just flip him for what they can get at the deadline, too.
I think there's almost no question that it's his last season and Kamara's last season. But let's have fun today before we start talking about that kind of stuff.
Sure. Looking at some stats, we mentioned this. Derek Carr is 19 of 23 for 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, a passer rating of 142.5.
Which was about 100 points more than Bryce Young, I believe.
Bryce Young came in at 32.8.
Yeah, so 110. 110 points better than Bryce Young. By the way, the scale only goes to like 156.8. You're 110 points better than somebody else. That's a pretty good day. So this should at least quiet down the haters for at least
there were no boos. There were no boos.
And look, I got to give it to Saints fans. They were pretty apathetic when he got announced before the game. I was worried they're going to boo him. I heard a couple boos here and there, but for the most part, they either were silent or cheered him. And look, but you got to be. It's like we talked about, Zach. Even if you don't think this team is going to be good, you got to be positive. If you're a fan, be positive. And stay positive until you can't be anymore.
You don't hope your team is going to lose in week 1.
Exactly.
You don't.
Or week 2 or 3 or 4.
And now that they've won this one and looked impressive doing it, you get to hope for another week.
Yeah,
you get to hope for another 7 days, and we'll see what happens in Texas.
I'm
next week.
guessing the spread next week will be somewhat, depending on what happens in that game, somewhere around 6 and a half.
The look ahead was 6.5.
Okay, so I'm completely guessing. I'm doing this.
Maybe you give the Saints a little bump for today's performance. We'll see what the Cowboys do.
Not a whole lot.
It's going to be 5.5, 6.
But that being said, so they expect a game that's within a touchdown, and again, it's not a game. Of course, you want to win the game, but you want to see the Saints continue to play the style that they played today and be successful, and not have 3 turnovers or whatever. So if you continue this style of play, and you fall, but you play a pretty decent game, then that's okay, and that's something that if they wouldn't have lost this game, you wouldn't be able to say about next week.
Yeah, so looking at some other stats, the Saints ran the ball 37 times.
That's impressive.
Alvin Kamara, 15 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. That's 5.5 yards per carry. Jamal Williams, 11 for 38. That's 3.5 per carry and a touchdown. But again, he's getting a lot of the carries when people know what's coming. Also,
the 50th time in his career that he's had 100 or more total yards of offense. Kamara, yeah. I mean, that's an impressive number. That's not something a lot of NFL players get a chance to do.
Yeah, AK also had 5 catches for 27 yards. Taysom Hill, most of this was early. He actually didn't get that many. He didn't get as many touches as I thought he would.
No.
5 carries for 35 yards. Easy math, 7 yards a carry. Only caught 1 pass for 1 yard. Derek Carr, 2 rushes, 13 yards. And then even the third string back, Jordan Mims, gets in on the action, 4 carries, 11 yards. Receiving, Kamara caught 5. Nobody else caught more than 4. That was Foster Moreau, 4 catches, 43 yards. Rashid Shaheed, 3 catches for 73 and the long touchdown. Juwan Johnson, 2 receptions, 26 yards. Jamal Williams, 1 catch, 13 yards. Chris Olave, only 2 catches, 11 yards.
Well, I'll turn the tables on you and ask you a question. Do you think that when they took at some point early, like and maybe by the end of the first quarter, early second quarter, it was pretty clear the Saints were going to win this game. Do you think you take some of those plays for Taysom Hill and maybe even Chris Olave and say, you know what? We don't need to show these things. Let's take them off the board so no one else sees them.
I don't know about second quarter,
but
certainly by the third or fourth quarter, if you had something in your back pocket. Well, I mean, 2-point play, right? Like everybody's got their favorite 2-point play. Saints weren't wasting that today.
Right.
They're not going to use stuff. And sometimes things are specific for a certain team and the looks you're getting. But this was a game. And this is why there was a lot of uncertainty about this game. You had 2 new coordinators on the Carolina side. You had a new offensive coordinator on the New Orleans side. Nobody quite knew what you were going to get here. And look, I was on the Saints Insider podcast this week saying I thought Carolina was a playoff contender, or at least could be in playoff contention, say going into December, like a 7-8. And look, week 1, maybe it's still the case. They didn't look like it today, but I did think this was a bad matchup for them in that Carolina doesn't have a lot of weapons. Both of their tight ends were out injured. The Saints secondary doesn't give you any room to breathe. And Bryce Young just looked awful when he didn't have those options out there.
He really did. And, if you're a Panthers fan right now, I don't know why you would be watching the show, first of all, but if you're a Panthers fan, you got to really be distraught about what you saw today. And not just because of a lopsided score against a team that's expected to win 7 or 8 games, but just the fact that it really doesn't look any different. You got a new coach in there that's supposedly offensive minded, and I didn't see any scheme or anything that changed anybody's opinion on why Carolina might be better today. I thought they might be a little bit better this season, but judging off of 1 game, you can't really say that. And Dave Canales certainly didn't make a difference for Bryce Young or the rest of the Carolina offense today.
No, I mean, tomorrow is overreaction Monday in the
NFL. 100%.
Cincinnati Bengals are in panic mode.
Yeah.
The New England Patriots are going to be great under Gerard Mayo. The New Orleans Saints are going to play in the Super Bowl at home.
Look,
and,
my best friend last year who drafted Kyron Williams for $1 in a $260 auction leave, cut him after week 1. And then he went for like $60-something. So it just goes to show you that, overreaction Monday, there will be a lot of overreacting. So that's why you can't get too far. Enjoy it. And I said this, had a couple of people texting me, well, more than a couple of people, but had some people texting me kind of making a mockery out of what the Saints are doing out here. And I said, seriously, enjoy it. We don't know if maybe they are this good. Maybe they aren't. They're probably somewhere in between, but enjoy. When you get 47-10, it's only the 18th time in Saints history.
Yeah.
They've scored 47 points or more, 18th time ever. So enjoy it, because next week it's not going to happen.
And I know people are kind of tuning in and out, so I just want to repeat what you said earlier. It's the most points they've scored in the month of September since victory over the Eagles in September of 2009, and we all know how that season ended.
Pretty good.
Not saying that's where this one is headed, but like if you were optimistic before today, you're more optimistic.
And that was
now.
in Philly, by the way.
If you were pessimistic before today, you're thinking maybe I was wrong.
Yeah.
And all this gives you is 7 more days to kind of enjoy the ride and imagine what could be. And then we'll find out what happens the Saints' next exam at AT&T Stadium next week.
Exactly. And look, again, if you can go into that Chiefs game at 2-2, of course, if you'd only pick 2 games you're going to win, you'd want to beat Carolina and you'd want to beat Atlanta because they're in your division.
Mm-hmm.
The first team, maybe to 4 wins in the division, is going to win the division. 5-1, I think, in the division certainly gets it. So no matter what happens with the other teams, but let's face it, the best chances they have to win, I think, look, Atlanta, I don't know how many people flip back and forth, but we kind of had it on while watching the Saints, and they didn't look very good today.
No, they didn't.
They couldn't find a way to get Bijan Robinson involved, and Kirk Cousins certainly wasn't all that today. And the Steelers defense, it's okay, but it's not super great. So, I mean, there's concerns in Atlanta. If you can find a way to go into Atlanta at 2-2, you're in excellent shape, or go in Atlanta 2-1, or come out of Atlanta 2-2, whatever. I mean, you want to have at least a minimum of 2 wins, maybe 3 by the time you play the Chiefs in week 5.
Yeah. Again, it's week 1. It's hard to keep yourself from looking ahead, but at this point, the Saints are 1-0 after a 47-10 victory over the Carolina Panthers today at the Caesars Superdome. We're going to take another quick break here on the Saints Insider postgame show. It's brought to you by Tulane Doctors. We're still waiting Jeff Duncan, Luke Johnson, and the boys from the Saints locker room, but we'll take a quick 30-second break here after this word from Tulane Doctors.
Your trusted Tulane doctors are now at East Jefferson General Hospital. Within these walls, you'll find our region's leaders in academic medicine, where state-of-the-art facilities house the innovation powered by Tulane Medicine, where collaborative care and compassion meet, and where our commitment to patient outcomes means a healthier future for our community. Tulane Doctors at East Jeff. When you see the shield, you'll know the future of medicine is here.
We're back here live at the Caesar Superdome Saints Insider post-game show. Zach Ewing along with Jim Derry. Boys are talking in the locker room. I imagine
they got to have a lot to say today.
I was going to say the Saints players may have a lot to say in interviews today.
I can imagine there's going to be a few snarky. I'm telling you, somebody in there is going to want to get it off their chest that you guys, and of course, nobody's going to get too fired up after one game, even a player, but somebody's going to get a little snarky, I bet. That's my guess.
Let's ask this, Jim. We talk about things from a betting perspective sometimes.
Yeah.
But not even from a betting perspective. Let's just say ranking teams 1 through 32. You did power rankings this year. Where did you have the Saints before today's game?
I had the Saints. I can't remember if it was 21st or 22nd, but somewhere in that ballpark.
So kind of in the third quadrant, toward the bottom of the third quadrant. You know, where do you have them now?
I'm going to say this. When I do power rankings in the first couple of weeks, because of overreaction Monday, I try not to change it too much. Now, I will. There's no question they're going to move up probably into the lower teams, maybe 2 or 3 spots, just depending. I have to look and see who's around them. But I'm more inclined to say Carolina is worse than I thought than I am to say the Saints are better than I thought. Again, not taking anything away from the Saints. I'm just saying when you're talking about bad or good, I think you can kind of see that Carolina has a lot of issues that are going to be really tough to fix.
Did you have Carolina 32nd?
Did not have Carolina 32nd.
Do you now?
I had Carolina somewhere around 27 or 28. I'd have to look at it and see. Because they're going to be worse than New England, right? Who beat Cincinnati today
on the road. Yeah.
Either New England or Tennessee was number 32. One of them was 31 and one of them was 32. And New England certainly moving out of that spot. And I mean, a game I definitely have to go watch some plays from. But yeah, Carolina's got to be in one of those bottom 2 or 3 spots for sure.
Pretty bad stuff. Stefan has another comment. He says, special teams also awesome. Snuffed punt, good returns. One return brought us 30. Yeah, I mean, Rashid Shaheed was awesome in the return game. Blake Grupe was awesome. I mean, not only did he make all 4 field goals, there wasn't ever a hint that those things were not good. The 57-yarder
would have been good from 65.
Yeah, maybe 3 yards to spare, 4 yards to spare.
I don't know. I thought it was a little more than that. I mean, he drilled it.
But it was plenty good.
You never thought it wasn't going to be long enough.
And, he was consistent, which was a problem in camp, but he also hit the long ones. The return game was good. I guess the only negative was Cedric Wilson as the backup punt returner muffed the punt in the fourth quarter there. The Saints only giveaway, their only turnover.
Yeah.
But it was 47-10 with 2 minutes left. I mean,
look, the fact that you got to go deep into the play-by-play to find negatives, and you're talking about a muffed punt in the fourth quarter is like your biggest negative when it was already 47-10.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that says everything about what today was, because there really wasn't much negative about that. And, even the DA haters, are they going to give him any credit for what happened today? I mean, you got to kind of. I mean, I thought the defense played very well. So, I mean, and as a whole, I mean, there wasn't a lot of plays that a head coach, I guess, needed to call. But, I mean, you won by 37 in your opener.
Right. Some of it's an incomplete grade just because the second half, when coaches kind of make their bacon, you didn't have to do that in this
Numbers
game.
just went down again because I said something good about Dennis Allen.
But I will say this, and this applies to Derek Carr, it applies to the defense, it applies to Dennis Allen. If you go back to the end of the first quarter of that game last December here against the Detroit Lions, and Lions are up, I think, 21-3 at the end of the first quarter. Yeah. From there to now, the vibes just, the Saints did not win that game, but they came back and made it somewhat interesting in the second half. Then they win 4 of their last 5 games. Now, granted, the loss was kind of ugly. It was to the LA Rams out in LA, but Rams ended last season
scored.
Yeah.
I think Carr had 3 touchdown passes in that one.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Carr played very well in the last 6 games of last year. Then he starts this game, only had 200 yards, but that's all he needed.
Yeah.
He had, I think, 85 yards at the end of the first quarter, so he clearly could have thrown for more than 200. 3 touchdowns, no picks. Defense looks great. At some point, you have to say maybe this team turned a corner. I mean, the roster is not that much different than it was at the end of last year.
No, it really isn't. But it's just going to come down to how much does scheme make a difference on offense? Does a scheme make that much difference? And does a play calling philosophy make that much of a difference? Did today. And look, the problem that I've always had with the Saints the past few years, and even before Carr got here with Winston here, and when they were shuffling the 4 different quarterbacks in and out, is that they were stagnant. They were just this stagnant offense that was willing to go 3 and outs and the speed I saw today were from the players that I've been watching. It wasn't like they got faster, but the way they set them in motion made them look faster. It's almost like the rearview mirror. It says objects may be closer than they appear. And I think that maybe they appear faster today than they really are, because everyone was in motion. Even the offensive linemen were in motion on almost every play. And I think that just shows you how different. You're not just blocking straight ahead. You're moving one way or the other to help with your scheme. And I think obviously that worked for the Saints today. We'll see if it continues to.
Yeah, goes right with this comment from What Time Is It Travels. Now I see the Kubiak offense. Wow, if they can keep it up, Saints can make the playoffs. I mean, this team was a competent offense away from the playoffs last year and probably the year before that. Now, there are some concerns about the defense maybe taking a step back with age and injury concerns and stuff. But this offense looked better. The defense looked just as good. This is what a playoff team does in a game like this. I'll go that far.
Absolutely. And you talk about making the playoffs. All you need to do to make the playoffs is win a lousy division. So, even though, like I said, it's game 1, so I'm not going to say my predictions are out the window and I predicted Atlanta to win 12 games. But, most people think that you only need to win 9 or 10 games to win the NFC South. Yep. And if that's the case, then the Saints are 10% of the way there, or maybe even a little bit better.
Tampa Bay Bucks are up 13-0 on the Washington Commanders. So it looks like it'll be.
Jaden Daniels had a rough start.
Yeah, it'll be a tie for first place in the division, but that's fine. It's week 1. You took care of business at home. Now they go to Dallas. Interesting comment from Stefan too. I'm glad he brought it up. Let's talk about Jake Haener being selected as the backup in this.
Oh, let's.
Now, caveat. Just because the Saints had to name somebody officially the backup quarterback. For one thing, the backup quarterback gets the helmet that has the communication device in with Clint Kubiak and Derek Carr. Also, the third quarterback typically is listed as an inactive, and he's an emergency quarterback. So that was Spencer Rattler. And Dennis Allen and Clint Kubiak could choose to switch it next week. I mean, we don't know. But for today, Jake Haener was the backup, which for all the hype Spencer Rattler got in the preseason, I think was always the most likely outcome.
Yeah, and I think that if you see that happen in game 1, there is absolutely no reason, because, frankly, the number 2 or the number 3 quarterback gets almost 0 reps, and the number 2 quarterback gets very few reps in practice. So the fact that it's this way in game 1 tells me that there's a very good chance, barring injury, that it will be this way in game 17. So, again, barring injury, things can happen. But, yeah, I mean, anyone I'll tell you where I was wrong. already. So let me tell you where I was right. I just don't think there was any reason for the Saints to make Spencer Rattler the number 2 quarterback. I didn't see what most of these fans saw, and that was that much better. I don't think he was better at all. I thought they were what and what. Haener had the job coming in, and I thought he had to get beat to lose the job, and I don't think he lost the job, and I think it was the right decision. And you and I have talked about this before, that if it's a short-term situation and Derek Carr gets hurt and you got somebody for a rest of a half and maybe or a game and a half, you probably want Haener. If something goes wrong and Carr's going to be gone for a long period of time and you want somebody to start 4 or 6 or rest of a season, then maybe you'd be more inclined to see what a Spencer Rattler had the rest of the year. So that's kind of, I think, where they still
especially if it turns into a situation where the season is lost, you're eliminated from playoff contention. You want to see what you have. But Dennis Allen has said, this is an ongoing competition. Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler. I mean, one of them could pass the other.
And when you don't throw it.
Now, here's the thing I will say, and I think this is where Spencer Rattler backers come from. Okay, Jake Haener has outplayed Spencer Rattler in practice pretty convincingly. From all reports, from videos we've seen, from what our writers say, from what other writers say, Jake Haener has looked better than Spencer Rattler in practice. He's made the coaches feel more comfortable. Rattler still looks like a rookie a lot of the time. That's not a knock on Spencer Rattler. It's just where they're at. In games, Haener has not looked as good. And honestly, he wasn't asked to do too much tonight, but I believe the only pass he threw was kind of a forced pass into double coverage. You can't draw conclusions from one attempt, but you do wonder at some point for Haener, it's got to translate from practice into the game.
I mean, basically, when you talk about what Rattler's done against real NFL competition, he's only really done it in 2 quarters of a preseason because the first game doesn't count. Hardly anyone that was playing then is on a roster right now. So to me, that doesn't even count.
That is true.
So
Malik Willis looked good in a preseason.
I think Dennis Allen tipped his hand and before preseason game 2, he all but said Haener was the second string quarterback. I don't think he's ever wavered from that. I think there was ever a reason to, but we got way more important things to talk about because if this becomes an issue, again, we've said this before, if this becomes an issue at any point in the season, you're talking about a lost season and they just won by 37 and they're 1-0. So let's be positive and find something good to talk about. And this ain't it.
You'll be positive on Datitude tomorrow?
I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I am going to be positive. We'll see if the haters come and show up, and if they show up, we'll take them on as we get them one by one. But I think tomorrow's going to be a pretty positive data.
11 a.m. tomorrow.
11 a.m. live tomorrow.
Host of the Datitude podcast. He's Jim Derry. Saints beat the Panthers 47-10. We're going to say goodbye to Jim and thank him and bring on our beat writer Luke Johnson here on the Saints Insider postgame show. It's brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Here's Luke. First question, what's worse, my Carolina Panthers prediction or your pants?
Come on, my pants are good. I've gotten so many compliments on the pants today.
From whom?
From people who matter.
Oh, all right. Well,
unlike you,
I guess not.
Just kidding.
No, look, this is going to be the age-old question of whether the Saints were that good today or the Panthers were that bad today. And usually the answer in those situations are a little bit of both.
I think it's a little bit of both. But I think that we came away from today encouraged by a lot of things. So, I don't think the Saints are going to go out and win every game by 37 points. I don't think they're going to go out and win every game. They could very well lose next week.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I came away encouraged today by the offensive line, by the relationship between Clint Kubiak and Derek Carr, and I think the defense played like a defense that we were kind of expecting to see. They made life difficult on Bryce Young. They stopped what is a bad rushing offense. It was a bad rushing offense last year. It might be even worse this year. But they did what they were supposed to do. So this is exactly the kind of performance you wanted to see in week 1 against a bad Carolina Panthers team. And we'll see how they fare once they go up against better competition. But it's much better than the 20-16 game that I was predicting.
You really have to dig to find negatives. They committed a few too many penalties.
Yeah,
backup punt return, muffed a punt. But I mean, all 3 phases were on it today.
Yeah. I mean, Jawan Johnson got his hands on a punt. Rashid Shaheed looked great in the return game. The offensive line, they gave up 1 sack, and it was kind of like a scramble drill sack, but they resulted in -1 yards. They paved the way for 180 rushing yards. They put up 47 points today, and Chris Olave barely was a factor in the game.
Yeah, 2 catches, 11 yards.
So, I think it was a great performance by them. I think, maybe probably opened some eyes around the league to what the Saints have, because I think a lot of people were really hard selling this team as irrelevant, and I don't think that's the case. Even if the Panthers end up being a really, really bad team, which I don't think they're nearly as bad as what today looked like, I think you have to pay attention to the Saints after today.
Yeah, we can talk more about this one, but just moving forward, this changes the whole tenor over. Now you got 4 very difficult games in a row. We know that.
Yep.
You're probably not winning them all, but the conversation has changed from, boy, can the Saints survive without going 1-5 to how many of these teams can the Saints pick off?
Yeah, and I think that was kind of what I was feeling a little bit before the year. I never thought they were going to be like a 1-4 team after 5 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But these teams are going to be challenges. I think Dallas, Philly, Atlanta, then KC.
Yeah.
I think all 4 of those teams will be difficult,
And 3 on the road,
and they're not going to put up 47 points against all of them, right? But like, I do think that based on today, you can see that this offense with the new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak is going to be fun. It's going to be difficult to prepare for. They're going to create matchups that the Saints are going to be able to exploit if they're able to run the ball like they were today. So like, they're going to be a hard out, and I think that's what we were kind of hoping to see out of this team was a team that plays really good defense. It can run the ball, and then we'll see what happens out of the passing game with that offensive line. I think 2 of those were really answered today, and we'll see. I think the passing game still remains to be seen, but like, they're going to be a tough out. Like, they're not going to go. They're not going to. I don't think going to have a lot of games like they did last year, where they were down 21-0 and having to dig out of a big hole. I just don't think that's going to be the case with this team.
Let's talk about that Kubiak offense. You wrote a great story about Clint Kubiak's offense, talking to his father, Gary, obviously longtime NFL coach and offensive coordinator. And the theme that Gary told his son, Clint, was, be aggressive. And we saw Saints go run at the beginning of the game, deep shot. Took a deep shot on 3rd down, got a pass interference call later in the game. I mean, we saw that. They are going to go downfield. They're going to lull you to sleep and then try to pounce.
It'll probably be the theme of my story after today's game. That opening drive, it was 5 plays. They had pre-snap motion on all 5 of the plays. That one of the passes was a play-action pass. And then on 3rd down, where we've seen this team be really conservative in the past, run a lot of stuff at the sticks, Clint Kubiak said, nope, I'm dialing up a shot play. Right? He was looking for a single high safety, which is what they got. And they had 2 options. Derek Carr looked at a crosser and said no, and then you looked off the safety, and then it was Rashid Shaheed in single coverage. You'll take that matchup every time, and it worked. Yeah. And it was really great to see a Saints offense be so aggressive, and I think that was what kind of showed to me throughout this game, but it was really evident on that first drive.
And I think Derek Carr has a reputation throughout his career. He'll check down, and then he'll only throw downfield when you're trailing or when he's forced to. That changed a little bit today. Like he showed he can make some of those throws at any point in the game.
Yeah. He had several deep shots down the field today. I mean, even the second drive of the game where they ended up having to settle for the long Blake Grupe field goal, they took another deep shot on 3rd down to Rashid Shaheed. So it's going to be an element of this offense. And I think when you combine that with an offense that runs the ball really well, which I think this is something that has happened throughout training camp. It wasn't just a today thing. And you add the element of the vertical game to that, I think it can be really exciting for this offense.
Got a comment here from Clay Hodges who says, relax. They were supposed to do that to Carolina. Wait until you played out.
I don't think anybody,
and
nobody's expecting them to put 47 points up.
You weren't betting Saints minus 35.5.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Look, we're trying to pump the brakes. I just said they're not going to put up 47 on everybody. Right. They're not going to go undefeated. They're not going to go out there and beat the brakes off the Cowboys next week. But I do think you have to take this for what it was, which was honestly a surprisingly dominant performance. And yes, the Panthers were terrible last year. I don't think they're as bad as a team that we saw out here today. I think the Saints just beat the brakes off them because they were a better team.
Sleeper playoff team? Maybe not.
The Panthers? Yeah, we have to go back and revisit your comments on the Saints pod earlier, because I gave you the look right away when you said it.
When I said that, in my defense, I meant it might be 7-8 on December 1st, and they have a path to the playoffs.
It's not happening, buddy.
It could still come true. But the Saints, look, if you're a bad team, it's really hard to beat somebody else by 37 points in the NFL.
Yes.
Bad teams don't do that.
I agree. Yeah, they got great quarterback play. They got great defensive play, and they ran the ball.
And the special teams was exquisite as well.
Every single facet of that game, they dominated. Bad teams don't dominate other bad teams that way. It was every single part of the game. And it wasn't a lot of fluky stuff either. Like that was a really good showing, and you should be happy with it. Nobody's out here saying the Saints are going to go to the Super Bowl this year because of that one game. Mm-hmm. But I think you do have to come away from this game feeling a whole hell of a lot better than you were about this team than you were before kickoff.
Yeah. Defense, great training camp. looked fantastic the whole time. Defensive line led the way. And then it's Alontae Taylor who gets 3 sacks.
Yeah, well, look, they were doubling Chase Young every time he was on the field. You know, they were making sure that he wasn't going to be the guy who beat him. But, you know, I think 2 of those sacks from Alontae Taylor he came completely untouched. And, you know, he's a guy who Dennis Allen said in the postgame, he's getting those sacks, not only because he's fast, but because he's aggressive. He has the right mindset for it. And, I mean, look, that was awesome. Guy's on pace for 51 sacks this year. You think he's going to make it?
I'll take the under.
Yeah, take the
I'll
under.
take the under.
It's probably safe.
He tied a team record shared by 51 others with 3 sacks in a game. He, as far as we could tell, though, is the only defensive back on that list.
I think he's the only defensive back in team history to have 3 sacks in a game.
Yeah,
So, pretty good game by Alontae Taylor. I think we'll see more of that. Maybe not more of the pass rushing stuff, but like I think he's going to have a really good year in that slot.
I think he had a sack last year on a corner blitz. Like he's shown the capability that he'll get home on those things in the right situation.
Yeah, he's a good player.
It's all positive. You know, I guess if you want to nitpick, there's some penalties. Penning and Fuanga each got a holding call.
That stuff's going to happen. Dennis Allen was doing that in the post game. That was like how he led his. You know, he's trying to tamper the excitement after, which I get. But like, man, they just beat Carolina by 37 points. You can nitpick on the penalties all you want. It doesn't matter. That's
what coaches do. When things are going really well, they try to tamper it down. When things are going poorly, they try to say, look, they're not that bad.
Back in the Sean Payton days, actually, it's a fun aside. They had many games like this, especially in like that 2018 season. They beat like 3 teams by like 30, 40 points. And after every one of those games, he was kind of surly in the post-game press conferences, like didn't want to like say anything good about his team. And then like after the games they lost, he was great. It is like a coach thing to do. I don't really get it. But.
Yeah. Speaking of Sean Payton, the Broncos are up 8-3 on the Seahawks right now. Tampa Bay's beating Washington. You know, Atlanta lost today. And I think it's just a reminder that the Saints aren't dealing with some juggernaut division here. I know Atlanta had a good offseason. But
they're very much in the same boat the Saints were last year, right? They bring in a new quarterback. You know, they have a lot of new elements on the team. They have a new offensive coordinator, a lot of new. I think it's going to take some time for them to gel before they really become like the Falcons team that they're going to be this year. I don't think that's representative of who they are. So I still fully expect the Falcons to be in the mix, but like it's week 1. Like you just never know how. Nobody thought the Saints were going to come out and put 47 points up today. You know?
No.
And everybody was kind of picking the Bears as this like sexy pick, and they were really struggling with the Tennessee Titans today. And I think they ended up winning a game because they had a bunch of big plays defensively. But
right.
It's so hard to like come into the season and know exactly what you're going to get. My preseason Super Bowl pick just lost to the New England Patriots today, so you just never know. You never know in these games.
Tomorrow is Overreaction Monday, so we'll try not to overreact too much to the Saints. One more thing before we let you go, Luke. Well, first of all, how did you get out of the locker room so much faster than everybody else? That's one question.
So I'm not writing about Alontae Taylor today, but a lot of people apparently are. So he was the last person to speak at the podium. I dipped out before he did, so I could come here and talk to you because this is what I'm excited about.
That's damn straight. Yeah. And my last question was about Blake Grupe, who had as good of a day as you could have as a kicker.
Yeah, 4 for 4, along with what 57.
57. Right? That was probably good from 60, 61.
Yeah. I think he's a pretty good player. You know, it's like there was a lot of excitement about Charlie Smith. And I think that's still warranted. I think he could still be a very, very good NFL kicker. But like, I think Grupe has had kind of quietly a pretty good camp. And for a guy who's stands about as tall as your kids, he's got a pretty big leg too.
So last year's opener, he was mistaken. He was not allowed on the field.
It was a preseason game.
He
kicked the game winner in the preseason game. They didn't let him on the field. But like, he's clearly a talented kicker. I think the thing with him is always going to be consistency, right? But today was a really good step in that direction. 4 for 4. He made all of his extra points. He made the mid-range field goals. He made the long field goals. I think he had 2 of 50+ today. So good game for him. I mean, the only guy we didn't really see much of today was Matt Habel. No idea what he is still.
Yeah, I think he had 3 punts all in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
nothing special to.
Yeah, well, that'll happen when you score on your first 9 drives of the game.
Right. So nothing but good news for the Saints today. He's Luke Johnson, beat writer. You can read his work at NOLA.com/Saints and in tomorrow's print edition of the Times-Picayune. This is the Saints Insider Podcast. We're going to take another break. We'll be back after this word from Tulane Doctors.
Your trusted Tulane doctors are now at East Jefferson General Hospital. Within these walls, you'll find our region's leaders in academic medicine, where state-of-the-art facilities house the innovation powered by Tulane Medicine, where collaborative care and compassion meet, and where our commitment to patient outcomes means a healthier future for our community. Tulane Doctors at East Jeff. When you see the shield, you'll know the future of medicine is here.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider Podcast. Zach Ewing here at the Caesars Superdome. Sorry, we're trying to find out what happened to Rod Walker, Jeff Duncan, and Matthew Paris. They're still in the locker room. Apparently, Alontae Taylor had a lot to talk about. And listen, he did. 3 sacks for a slot corner. That's a pretty spectacular game. I think he had a pass breakup late in the game as well. Guy had a great training camp. We showed clips of him going one-on-one with Chris Olave in practice and really going toe-to-toe with a guy who's like a Pro Bowl wide receiver. And now he's showing that he's got some blitzing capabilities as a pass rusher. Bryce Young's going to be seeing Alontae Taylor in his nightmares. Carolina Panthers, just awful stuff. A couple of quick score updates from the afternoon games. It's halftime in Los Angeles. The Raiders are beating the Chargers 7-6. Tampa Bay Buccaneers beating the Washington Commanders 13-7 now. Brian Robinson had a 7-yard touchdown run for the Commanders to cut into the Tampa Bay lead. The Cowboys just scored to go up 13-3, make it 14-3 with the extra point over the Cleveland Browns. So next week's opponent for the Saints looking good early thus far. And then Sean Payton's Denver Broncos, they're beating Seattle 10-9 with 2 field goals and 2 safeties. All right, so Seattle's got a touchdown and a field goal, and they missed the 2-point conversion. Denver's got 2 field goals and 2 safeties, and they're winning the game 10-9. So bizarre score from up in Seattle. Got a comment here from Clay. Love what I saw with the offensive play calling. Carr executed the game plan, found an identity in the run game. Good way to start the season and boost some confidence. Absolutely. It's all you can do. You can only play the schedule in front of you. Saints opened with, about the easiest opponent you could hope for, the Carolina Panthers at home. But they're like, look, Jim and I were talking about the betting line in this game was only 3.5, 4 points. Like there were plenty of people who thought Carolina could come in here and win this game, or at the very least make a game of it. On the Saints Insider podcast on Friday, all 5 of us picked the Saints to win. But I mean, I think Matt Paris had 24-7 Saints, so he had kind of a blowout. But the rest of us had relatively close games, like 20-16. I had 23-21. 20-13 was one of them. Like it was just a, supposed to be a competitive game simply because thought Carolina would be a little bit better, and we thought the Saints are just kind of who they are, and they're a middling team who can't blow anybody out. Well, guess what? We were wrong, and I would say, last year's team did win a couple of blowouts. They won a very impressive game in New England where the Patriots had no chance to win that game, but this one felt different. That one up in Foxborough felt a little bit like the Patriots could not get out of their own way. They had Mac Jones throwing bad interceptions. They were committing penalties left and right. Saints got a pick 6. I mean, it kind of got out of hand with not necessarily fluky plays, but plays that you can't count on. Whereas today, Saints did have 3 takeaways. They got some short fields. Like, look, some of those things contributed to a 37-point victory because otherwise that doesn't happen. But they also just shoved the ball down Carolina's throat. They ran for 6.9 yards per carry in the first half. Derek Carr threw for 200 yards in the game. I think about 160 of those were in the first half. They got pretty much what they wanted on offense. Carolina couldn't do anything when they had the ball. Special teams were great. There was just really not a lot to complain about at all. So we're waiting on. Oh, here we go. Matt Paris and Jeff Duncan emerging from the locker room. Looks like Matt is going to take the microphone first. He's beat writer Matthew Paris. Saints beat the Carolina Panthers 47-10. Matt, you were the one of us who picked kind of a blowout on Friday. So kudos to you for that. But I'm sure you didn't necessarily expect 47 points either.
No. I thought this offense was going to struggle, and it didn't. So I did think this defense was going to be able to generate a lot of pressure on Bryce Young. We saw that again. Young had a 43% completion percentage. That's the second lowest of his career, and the first one is against the Saints as well. So a really impressive day. It's just one of those games that once things started going right for the Saints, they just continued. There wasn't really that much adversity throughout the game, but it was a really impressive performance, all things considered.
I mean, I think you're Carolina, you like to run the ball, but once you're down 17-0 in the first quarter, that becomes difficult to plan. And Bryce Young, like you said, 13 of 30. But for the Saints, like I was just saying, were there some kind of fluky plays, some of the interceptions, things like that? Yeah, but look, they dominated in every way you could dominate. They ran for almost 7 yards per carry in the first half, 19 of 23 passing in the game, 19 of 24, I guess, if you count Hayner's incompletion. Special teams was great. I mean, there's just nothing. I know Dennis Allen tried to complain about some stuff, but there's just not much there.
Right. No, I mean, he definitely did. He tried to make it, this is only one game. We're going to clean up the things we need to clean up. But you really couldn't have asked for a better performance if you were the Saints, especially given everything that had happened in the offseason by changing this offensive staff. I think you really saw kind of an identity of what the Saints want to be today. That's kind of my takeaway from this, is that, you know, by establishing the run the way they did, by opening up the play action, like these are things that the Saints have talked about for months, and they lived up to it today anyway.
And we saw right off the bat, run, having some success on the ground. Deep shot. Derek Carr drops in the bucket. Rashid Shaheed gets separation. I mean, it's just executed perfectly, and it's what they want to be.
Yeah, that's something that Luke's story on Clint Kubiak did such a nice job of showing, is just advice from his father, Gary Kubiak, of constantly telling Clint, just be aggressive, shoot your bullets, I think was the term that was kind of fun. And you saw that. I mean, when they were in favorable situations, and they were in a lot of favorable situations today, they weren't afraid to let it rip. And that's something that the Saints did. Question
I asked Luke, and I think the answer is probably a little bit of both, but was this the Saints being good or the Panthers just being that bad?
Yeah, I mean, probably a bit, definitely a bit of both. I definitely think the Panthers, like, they just didn't, like, off defensively, I think it was a lot of the Panthers just, you know, Bryce Young had guys open, and they just overthrew him. The pressure was there. Their offensive line still isn't really good based on all those investments, but what you saw offensively, I mean, this team has talent. You saw that. I mean, Chris Olave had a really quiet game. I think he had 2 catches for 12 yards. I mean, he's going to be their top receiver, I think, by the time this year's done. So the fact that they could still go to so many other players and be as productive as they were, I do think is, indicative of what this offense can be. Looking
forward, Matt, obviously, the Saints are not suddenly going to be favorites to go to Dallas, and when the Cowboys are beating the Browns 14-3, they look impressive so far. I mean, this is still a game that's going to be difficult. But how much more optimistic are you about this 2024 Saints season than you were 3 hours ago?
Yeah, I think that the ceiling is maybe a little higher than it was. It's not going to be like this every week. I think you're still going to see some weeks where Derek Carr is hot and cold, but as long as he can keep playing like this, like I had them in the 9-8 range, and I still think they could be that when all said and done, but maybe now playoffs.
Well, Atlanta lost. I mean, it's week 1, but those probabilities do change.
That's kind of maybe if I had to overreact to week 1, to the classic overreaction, I do. Maybe the playoffs are more realistic than I thought a week ago.
Yeah. All right, he's Matthew Parrish, beat writer for the Times-Picayune. You can read his work on NOLA.com/Saints. We're going to sub out and have Jeff Duncan tag in, our legendary Times-Picayune columnist. Jeff, speaking of legendary, 47-10 in the season opener. Pretty memorable performance from the Saints today.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways the city needed this. You know, I mean, we've kind of been through some tough times lately in the city, and the team traditionally and historically has kind of been the conscience of the citizens here in this city. And I think the city needed to kind of collectively have something to rejoice about. And you could feel it in the Dome today. I mean, the electricity, the energy, it started snowballing on the Panthers, and the home crowd was definitely the 12th man today. I thought it completely unnerved Carolina. And once this thing got rolling earlier, it really got away from Carolina.
Yeah. And there was actually a point in like the second quarter when it's 23-0, 30-0, where the crowd almost like they were loud and boisterous, but there was also this feeling of, wait, what? Like, right. We have a good team again? You know?
Yeah. It was a real feeding frenzy. And look, I don't want to temper it because it was an incredible performance. I thought thoroughly all phases of the game were on point today from the Saints. It's about as good an opener as you could expect to have, just because everything that you were questioning going into the game really kind of validated the offensive system played out. I heard you talking to Matt. I mean, it played out exactly the way they've said they want it to play. They want to be able to run the ball. That's going to set up the big plays deep. They've got the guys on the outside that can win deep. We saw it all happen right there on the first series. And then the defense, of course, being aggressive, making plays, getting the ball back on short fields, all that starts to feed into itself. So very, very positive performance. But I will remind people, it was 4 years ago I saw the Saints beat the Green Bay Packers 38-3 in the opening game, and Green Bay won their next 7 games, went to the NFC Championship game, and the Saints missed the playoffs. So having said that, people should celebrate today because it was a rare one.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said earlier, if you were optimistic coming in, you're a little more optimistic today. If you were pessimistic coming in, you're second-guessing yourself today a little bit. Having said that, like Dallas next week, Philadelphia comes in here the week after that, and then it's Atlanta and Kansas City. This team's going to get tested. We're going to find out how real this was.
Yeah, I tell you, the thing, though, that looked real to me today was the running game. I was wondering how it would play out. And literally the first play of the game, it was a really nice run that got the Saints in good down and distance. That's what the key is going to be to this offense. And that's a good front that they went against today. I mean, Derek Brown to Davian Clowney. We know Shy Tuttle, Shaq Thompson. I mean, there's some legitimate dudes in that front seven, and they were getting blown off the ball. That's a very encouraging sign. Week one, both sides are going to bring it. And the fact that they were blowing them and dominating the last scrimmage, to me, is a very encouraging sign that can be the foundation of the offense the way they want it to be this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other side of the ball, the offensive line, the Saints defensive line was the talk of training camp, but Alontae Taylor comes up with 3 sacks. I mean, they were showing some creativity on some of those blitz packages on defense too.
Yeah, that was Dennis Allen's specials there. I mean, he dials those up. He's one of the best in the business at those exotic pressure packages. That's not going to happen every week, but he's such a terrific athlete. He has great instincts and obviously the size and the speed and explosiveness to do that. And I thought it was a wrinkle that Carolina never really caught on. And it certainly set the tone earlier with the way they were being aggressive on both sides of the ball.
I'm the idiot who said Carolina could be a playoff team this year on our podcast.
Well, I'm going to remind you of that.
I'm sure you will all remind me of that.
Yep.
Hand up. How bad were they? How much did that contribute to this final score?
I wrote in my column tonight, I mean, it's so hard to evaluate this game because Carolina was so bad. I mean, they were 1 of 10 on third down. I think they had 190-something yards. Bryce Young, again, with a 30-something passer rating. I think he had something
32 point something. Yeah,
similar to that. Last time they played, I anticipated the Saints defense shutting them down. I didn't anticipate this kind of offensive performance. I don't think anybody did. But it's not going to be that easy in weeks ahead. It's certainly not going to be that easy in Dallas against that defense and against that pass rush. But no matter what, that's an NFL team out there, and you just scored your first 9 times you had the ball. That does not happen very often, if ever, in an NFL game. So I think you have to take it seriously the way they executed. And I think more than anything else, that's important. They executed what they were supposed to do, regardless of the opponent, and that's a very encouraging sign.
It's week 1, and we don't want to overreact to it, but we want to appropriately react to it. So before we let you go, how much do you upgrade the Saints? If you had them, I don't know, where you maybe had them preseason 20th in the NFL, whatever it was, how much of a bump are you giving them from today?
Well, look, I think you have to be encouraged, but you really can't evaluate a team till really 4 weeks in. I think 4 weeks is a good enough time, a good enough body of work to really get a feel for a team. So after 1 week, it's hard for me to change my pessimistic view of the season. But I would say offensively, I like what I saw a lot this was executed exactly the way all the players and coaches have said they want to execute it. It was almost carbon copy of what Kubiak told Luke Johnson, how they wanted to do these things. It's how they played out. But, Carolina was a team I expected them to win by double digits, and they won by even more than that. So they took care of business is the way I would say it, maybe with an asterisk. But let's see how they do these next few weeks when they really get into the gauntlet against teams that could be playoff contenders.
So Saints Take Care of Business today. He's Jeff Duncan. You can read his column on NOLA.com/Saints here shortly, and his work every day in the Times-Picayune. Jeff, I'll let you get back to work, and we'll hand off to Rob Walker. He's back there talking to Deuce.
Rod's
and
chatting
we'll,
away.
Yeah, we'll wrap up the Saints Insider postgame show with a chat with Rod Walker, Times-Picayune columnist. And Rod, one of the more eyebrow-raising performances from a Saints team. I mean, I don't think any of us expected that level of dominance.
Yeah, you couldn't have expected that. I mean, we came to the day curious about what this team was going to look like, particularly the offense, and didn't take long for them to show us that they indeed were holding back in the preseason, I guess. But I mean, we got to take all this with a little caution because I don't think the Panthers are that good. So I don't think we get – and all the players kind of talked about that. Like, it's just one game. It doesn't define the season. So we got to see where it goes from here. But it was definitely a good start and the kind of start this team needed for this fan base. I mean, this fan base needed to see a win like this.
It's a little symbolic, I think. They just changed the scoreboard here, took the 47-10 off and changed Panthers to Eagles on the scoreboard, which is the Saints' next opponent here in the Dome in 2 weeks. So already, I mean, that's just standard stadium ops procedure, but they're turning the page. Saints are going to turn the page. I mean, things get more difficult, but couldn't have asked for anything better than this.
Yeah, I mean, it was I wrote about it. I mean, just pretty flawless performance, offense, defense, special teams. Everybody was good. We didn't see the punter until late in the fourth quarter. That's how good it was. I mean, they scored in their first 9 possessions. Nobody's done that in at least the last 25 seasons. So, I mean, just an impressive all-around performance. He got sacked 4 times. Bryce Young got sacked 4 times. Saints turned them over 3 times. Got 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery. So, I mean, nothing went wrong with this team today other than, they had some players get banged up, which is concerning. But outside of that, I mean, they played about as well as you can play.
Yeah, Marshawn Lattimore exits with a hamstring injury. Foster Moreau with a head injury.
He will be in concussion protocol. DA said after the game, and Lucas Patrick is dealing with a toe injury, which forced him out of the game.
Yeah, and toe injuries, as we know, can be serious things. They don't sound it, but they can definitely, especially as a lineman, keep you out for a long time. So we'll see about the injury report as we move forward. Speaking of Lucas Patrick, though, I thought, obviously people say, okay, we know Derek Carr's serviceable at quarterback. Alvin Kamara's obviously proved it at running back. They've got Shaheed and Olave at wide receiver. They've got the pieces, but this offensive line is just too much of a problem. They were not a problem today. I mean, a couple of holding calls here or there, but the pass protection looked good. The run blocking looked exceptional. Like, you got to give them a nod today.
Yeah, they did their job today, and I think the fact they were able to run the ball made it so much easier for this team. They weren't I don't know if they were in any. It didn't feel like they were in many third and longs at all. And I think you can attribute that to how well they were doing the run blocking. But even the pass protection was pretty good. On the Carr touchdown, somebody was closing in on him, and Carr just kind of hung in there and threw it at the last moment to Rashid Shaheed on the opening drive. So they did get to Carr there, but he was able to get rid of the ball in time. And so, I mean, yeah, the offensive line held up today. We've criticized them all summer long, so they do deserve their credit today, I feel like.
Yeah, and even on that pass where he gets hit as he releases it to Shaheed, like, he held on to that ball a long time. Shaheed ran 50 yards downfield, and even for Rashid Shaheed, that takes a few seconds. So it was like I don't think you can complain about that. I don't think you can complain about pretty much anything. Defensive line didn't get any sacks. That's interesting. Alontae Taylor gets 3 of them, and Demario Davis got credited for one where he forced Bryce Young out of bounds.
NFL sacks leader, Alontae Taylor, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. And Saints single-game record holder tied with 51 others, including, as Jim said, Cam Jordan like 11 times on that list.
Yeah, I looked at it. Yeah.
But Alontae Taylor, obviously very impressive. Did anything surprise you as far as usage, as far as the way the Saints went about things? I mean, other than just the fact that they executed in every facet.
Yeah, I think one thing that may have surprised me a little bit, because we didn't really see a lot of it in camp if we saw it all, but we talked about Alontae's 3 sacks. I mean, we didn't see them, bringing him around like that on the quarterback, and he was able to do that. I thought that was pretty impressive because we hadn't seen it, and obviously Carolina hadn't seen it either. They didn't have any answers for it. I mean, every time he blitzed, he got to the quarterback. So to me, that would probably be the main thing. And
that's something where, even if that's just something specific with Carolina's defense, it's on film now. Everybody's got to account for it. You got to be careful. So.
Yeah. And another thing, I guess I could say Blake Grupe. I mean, he had 2 field goals over 50 yards. That's something that DA doesn't always do. I think one time he tried it out there. I think he may have been surprised they were kicking the field goal. I think he may have thought it might have been a punt situation, or so. I mean, they weren't afraid to use him, and he did his thing today too. And there were some people who thought that maybe the Saints didn't make the right choice when they made their roster cuts. But I mean, Blake Grupe definitely performed well today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was still 7-0 at that point. If he misses that field goal, Carolina's got the ball almost at midfield. That's a risk we haven't seen Dennis Allen take a lot in the past at that stage in the game, but he felt confident in throwing Groupie out there, and Groupie repaid that.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of this team scoring on 9 straight possessions. I don't know if Dennis Allen would have done that last season, but yeah, he did feel confident, and I guess it helps when your defense comes out and they had just gotten the interception, I guess, right before that. So I think that helps when your defense is playing well. And I think Dennis Allen just kind of felt like, this is one of those games where everything's going right. It was early in the game, but I mean, I think he just kind of felt it and went with it.
Let's push the pedal to the metal a little bit. And that may be a theme. I don't, it's too early to say.
Right.
But if Dennis Allen's back is against the wall, as you wrote in your kind of preseason column, this is now or never for Dennis Allen. I mean, there's not a lot of room for caution, I don't think. You just go see what you got.
Yeah, and they did it today against a team that was clearly overmatched from start to finish. So I know everybody's excited about this game. I'm going to bring the expectations down a little bit. Yeah, just because, I mean, we'll know a lot more about this team next week when they go to Dallas. I think I know that Dallas is better than this team they played today. I thought Bryce Young really struggled. He's basically struggled in all 3 games he's played against the Saints. So I think in Dak Prescott, they'll get a much better test. And it's a road game, so you just have to see what this team – we get a chance to really see what this team's made of next week.
Yeah, I don't even know that they need to win the game to prove anything. But if you go toe-to-toe with Dallas on the road, then people know, hey, this is a legitimate playoff contender. And we'll see what happens. We'll talk more about that on the Saints Insider podcast this week, but that has been the Saints Insider postgame show. Saints 47, Panthers 10. He's Rod Walker. Our thanks also to Jim Derry, Luke Johnson, Matthew Paris, and Jeff Duncan for stopping by. Norman Bell running the camera, and Spencer Urquhart behind the scenes. Tulane Doctors is our sponsor. We thank them, and we thank you for watching. We'll see you on the Saints Insider podcast on Wednesday. Until then, have a good one.